This is the Well Brewed Podcast, where we share our 40 plus years of commercial brewing experience to help fellow beer lovers on their journey of building a brewery. Full disclosure, we own a brewery equipment business and we aren't here to sell you anything. This is truly about helping the industry that we love. So, kicking off into episode number 2 of Well Brewed Podcast. G'day, Jake.
Hi, everybody.
Clemmy, how are you?
G'day.
So we thought we were on such a roll with episode 1, we thought we'd do episode 2 directly after. So this is, even though released a week later, recorded within 10 minutes. So I've managed to change my shirt. I noticed no one else bothered.
No,
I was going to call you on it.
I thought we were going to mention that we were doing it right after and thus forego the need to change shirt.
And thanks, Matt. We're still drinking Rebel Pale.
Got a few more to get through. Episode
2, we're going to talk about site selection. I think the remainder of this series is probably going to be more focused at brew pubs, which is what we have more of an interest in. We think it's the most viable business model, and we think there's probably going to add more value to more people because there's going to be more people.
There's not many people setting up production breweries that need to know the ins and outs of how to set up a brewery.
No, but also if you do have questions about that specifically, shoot them through to podcast@wellbrewed.com.au and we will address it. But I think we're going to focus more on brew pubs. So, Jake, you're the engineer, mate. Do you want to just give us a bit of a view on how important it is to select the right site and having the right things there when you are looking at sites?
So, these rules of thumb that I'm going to go through, they're all... Nothing's set in stone. You can put a brewery anywhere. I've seen a brewery on the street and the side of the road at Gladstone. It's crazy. But
Terminal 2, Virgin.
Yes. You can put a brewery pretty much just about anywhere. But if you don't have these list of basic requirements that I'm going to go through, for each one you don't have will significantly, say by 50 grand or so, increase the cost of your build or decrease the functionality of your brewery.
Jake, sorry, I might just jump in and just reiterate from episode 1 that there's many ways to skin a cat. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and anything we talk about is from our experience. It's what we've seen work and not work. It's by no means definitive or exhaustive. So please just take that. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so I guess I've seen a lot of people get really excited, find the ideal site, sign the lease straight away, only to realise that it doesn't have any of these things. So the idea is that if you're hunting for a site now, this is a good guide for what you should be looking for and asking the real estate agents and even negotiating with your landlord to have them pay for some of these upgrades for you to take on the lease. Because all of them are improving the infrastructure, and unless you own that land, it's not really in your best interest to have to pay and front all the cash for that upgrade.
On that, are we going to mention we should probably do a bit on owning versus renting?
Yeah, well, maybe we can circle back around to that after this list. It's probably a good point to touch. I guess a good place to start is size. I think I briefly mentioned it in the first episode, but you really are for a brew pub looking for 400 metres squared to 600 metres squared. This has been worked out through our massive spreadsheets we love to build. Basically, what is it? Well, yeah, true. Collective we. Yes. It's basically got to do with area that you need for production versus the bums on seats to make a good return on investment. So that 600 metres squared you're looking for, if you go down to a site that's 400 metres squared, you're going to need something like a mezzanine, an outdoor area, something where you can increase your seating capacity so you get a good return on investment.
So, Jake, probably just worth noting this, you can make it work with smaller. And depends on your business model, depends on your business goals, and it depends on how much you are working in the business, what your staffing costs and your rent, etc., right? But this is just a general average rule of thumb on where we see the sweet spot for these breweries.
Yeah,
'Cause
100%.
you can see people. I've seen people do it with like 150, 200 square meters with a brewery. They work in the bar themselves, and you can do it, right? You can still pay yourself, and
I mean,
it's
Clemmy,
viable.
what's the smallest space we've put a brewery into? Like 80 meters squared
80's pretty close. I think,
for a 10 hec. Like, I think that
yeah.
was pretty tight.
The one at Charming Squire was a bit less, but
Yeah, that was at 8
Um,
hec, so it probably makes sense, right?
yeah.
Just had a big
Very
shoehorn.
small. But heck, it was shoehorned in on the mezzanine, so it's very small space.
Yeah. So it's not that it can't be done. It's just like what I would suggest looking for is around that 400 to 600 meters squared.
Yep.
Next thing is electrics. People often overlook the electrics. They don't realise the draw, the power that you need to run all the three-phase motors and the peak loads of a brewery when you've got the cool room, chillers, everything firing at once. Like a lot of people can get a small brewery running quite comfortably and brew pub running quite comfortably on about 100 amps. I would 100% leverage this off the landlord. If you don't have it in the building, just say, hey, happy to take the rent, the lease this place for 10 years, etc. But I want you to go in halves, upgrading the electrics or something along those lines. See what you can negotiate.
They're not cheap, are they, mate? Like we've seen
About 60K, I think, was the last one I saw to upgrade. And that was from 60 amps that was allotted up to 100.
60K.
Yeah, so, I mean, it can, if you don't have that built into your budget, that's almost a 10% increase in budget for a $600,000 build. So if you're in the low end of what we seen people do this for, it could drastically blow out your costs. Next thing is probably ceiling height is a good one to look for. Like if it's under 5 meters, it's going to be a really tight fit, especially if you're going for grist case. It's probably the lesser of two, the lesser of the evils, because I've seen, once again, breweries go into 3 meters, something like that, something crazy where you're standing on the brew deck and you're kind of tilting your head like this so you can fit up there. But 5 meters is a good rule of thumb. It looks good. The brewery looks good. It's comfortable. You've got good airflow for your patrons.
You can get your grist case off the ground.
You can get your grist case above your mash tun, which will save you a few dollars on a double auger setup.
And also floor space, right?
And yeah, gets you floor space. You can fit double brew tanks in easily, or triple brew tanks if you want.
And dry hop them.
And dry hop them comfortably without being smushed up against the ceiling.
So, Jake, I do have a question for you. Can you get RSI of your neck on those brew houses when you're...
I haven't brewed on one for long enough. I'm a bit of a spoilt brewer. I've only brewed on nice brew houses.
Not being the shortest guy around.
Yeah.
I do remember working on a brewery where you just had to stoop, and it's not ideal.
It's not
pleasant. It's not what you want to be. It's not what you want to subject your employee staff to do, unless you only want to hire short people. But that's not our.
Let's not marginalise.
We don't discriminate. We don't discriminate.
It's also not what we're here to advise on.
No.
Yeah.
Staffing will be episode 6.
Our preference when we're in regards to manways on fermenters is to have a top manway. They're more hygienic. They're easy to use. You don't have to dismantle them. You don't have to wash them out, scrub off the yeast. So that adds another half a metre on top of your tank. So if you've got a triple brew tank, you're not going to fit it in if your ceiling height's lower than average.
Well,
so,
it's hard to dry hop, right? And
it's a bit unsafe.
Yeah.
And if you're a brewer that likes to push the limits on your equipment, like all craft brewers tend to do, and you set up a hop volcano, that hop volcano is coming down right on top of your head. So
it's bad news bears.
Yes, not ideal. But we digress a little bit. We'll move on from ceiling heights. Next thing probably to touch on would be water main. So water being the main ingredient in beer. It's important to make sure that you have enough water coming into your facility. And you'd be surprised at how little regard people pay to this. Now, it's not the hardest thing to do. You basically scurry around the site, look for the main header coming into the building, and note its diameter. So most it's on average the water pressure, mains pressure in Australia would be somewhere around 5 bar. If you're lucky, it's over that. So on a 1 inch line coming in, that basically translates to 100 litres per minute. And then you can use that rule of thumb to size all your equipment later on. But we're chasing that 100 litres a minute. And if you think about it, that's 10 minutes to put in 1,000 litres. It means you can mash in a reasonable amount of time. You're not affecting your extract enzyme efficiency by sitting there taking too long. You can fill your hot liquor tank, cold liquor tank at a reasonable amount of time, so you're not waiting there for hours.
It also means that you need to size the equipment downstream of your water mains, like a carbon filter, for example, at a reasonable rate to ensure that you're not reducing the flow rate into your brewery. Or if you're using a hose on the brew deck, then you want it to be a bit more than
a garden hose.
Yeah.
A weak stream, if you will.
Yeah, is that what you were going to say as well, Lockie?
I was actually going to say that if you're at 100 litres a minute and you're filling up kegs of beer for sparkling water for your bar during service, you could fill up 2 in a minute. But I'm not sure it's as relevant.
Well, what I do to determine it as well is you get your 20 litre buckets from Bunnings, put it under the tap, and sit there with your stopwatch and time how it fills up.
It's agricultural, but it works.
It works, but you also need to, there could be something in the premises that's restricting your flow. They often step down the pressure and stuff when they're going into buildings, especially if the buildings aren't using the water for commercial processes. If it's just for a toilet, they're not going to run a toilet at 100 litres a minute. So, yeah, it's...
Maybe not at your house, Jake.
No, well. The other big one, I guess, that you've really got to pay special attention to and do a fair bit of due diligence when you're inspecting and researching these properties is to just check the zoning, the council zoning. Because you could, if you don't have appropriate zoning and you don't have, and you're expecting to do something within 6 months of taking over a property, if you don't have appropriate zoning, your DA could explode out to be several years long.
And look, I know every council is different. What zoning typically we're looking for in Australia?
So light industrial is a good one. Also mixed zoning, they call it. It's kind of everything goes. So in Brisbane, for example, Stones Corner, it's mixed zoning. So you have some residential stuff across the street, but then you got restaurants, cafes, pubs,
There's
hairdressers.
Also no breweries in Stones Corner, so...
I know.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. There's a site for sale at the moment.
Is there?
Yeah, that's why I looked at it. Yeah, so having appropriate zoning could literally shave months and months off your DA.
Yeah.
And save you thousands of dollars of consulting. Because consultants are probably one of the biggest underrated expenses when starting a brewery, because it's not tangible and it's not intuitive.
Yep.
You don't get anything at the end of it. You spend 60 grand on consultants and you get told, yes, your project can go ahead. But
man, who's spending 60 grand on consultants? Jesus.
So if you can find the unicorn that's DA approved for light industrial, for example.
Medium impact.
Medium impact light industrial.
Anyone looking for one? What about my only other thought, Jake, was flooring. Is there anything you should look for in your floors?
I think The biggest thing would be, Chloe and I inspected a site a while back that had like a wooden floor that was like suspended. That's not going to hold the weight. So you're looking at quite a significant civil cost if you come across anything like that. But as long as the floor is concrete, even if it's a suspended slab, normally you might just incur a little bit of extra engineering costs to make sure that the weights are all going to be kosher.
Mm-hmm. But definitely stuff you should be looking at before you're signing any leases, right?
100%, because it could add
unless you've got a solid
cost.
concrete slab straight onto ground, you should probably be investigating.
Yes, 100%.
How it's going to carry the weight.
And it's if you eyeball the empty weight of a ferment, like a 10 hectoliter fermenter is probably 500 kilos. You could then quickly
plus a ton.
Plus a ton for the contents. You can quickly do some back of the envelope calculations to figure out your static load on a slab. Take that to an engineer, and they'll be able to go or nah.
The only other point I had thought about with floors was if you're not going to or not able to build a slab on a slab for drainage, etc., is thinking about fall.
Yes.
So we were quite lucky when we built the original ballistic site. The whole floor had a 1 in 100 fall all towards the front door, which was good. You can check it with lasers, but the other good way to do it is fill up buckets of water and throw them around, see where water goes. Done it dozens of times. It works a treat. It makes a bit of a mess, but hopefully it's not your building yet. So that was just the other thought about flooring.
The intent, obviously, is that breweries are going to need a separate effluent system.
Yes, trade waste is a big one. So if you can find a site that has an existing trade waste, it's good to get the volume of it because it can be added to yours. I think that long gone are the times where breweries could get away with murder. With the rise of craft brewing has been a lag, but the council is definitely on to the impact that craft breweries have on trade waste. So it's better to go in with quite a comprehensive trade waste plan these days and make sure you're crossing your I's and dotting your T's when you
will get stung. We've seen people get stung. Multiple friends of ours recently have just been pulled up. It's just a thing. Councils won't just allow you to put anything down the drain.
It's significant solids and significant BOD. So it's going to have an impact on the local trade waste system. So it makes sense. Eventually, as your volumes go up, it's going to get even worse. So you will get audited at some point, we believe. Like they're going to crack down on it even more. You will get audited. They will measure your BOD. They will measure your TDS. And
sorry, Clemmy, we're not all chemists, industrial chemists, mate. BOD, TDS.
Total dissolved solids. So
that's things like your salts, right?
And everything including salts and everything is dissolved in your beer, in your water stream. So they're the things that are going to impact what's going into the effluent system.
And Jake, what about BOD? What's that?
So BOD is how much oxygen is required to break down whatever, it's typically organic matter, is present in solution. So this will be things like your yeast, your sugars, anything that's going to be processed by a microorganism and break down and essentially be metabolized. So sugars get metabolized, but actually by yeast, and actually yeast then further gets metabolized by other microbes and broken down. So that all goes to growing a biomass in your wastewater treatment system. And what leaves that system is essentially more pure water than what went in. It won't be perfect yet because there's a lot of other steps that'll happen in the sewer.
You wouldn't drink it?
Not at that stage, no.
It needs to go past the Ninja Turtles first before that.
Yeah.
I can't believe I briefly forgot how much wastewater stuff you did in your degree.
I did loads. Wastewater and advanced wastewater.
Clemmy, did you have anything else to add on site selection?
Just from a commercial perspective, probably more than anything, is if you're going to sell most of your beer across your own bar, then put it in a zone that's got as much high density population as possible so that you've got as many walk-ins as you can, because
Sao Paulo, for example.
Sao Paulo, great example.
Great example. Really relevant. Perfect.
Very high population density.
Yes.
Not sure of the density of brew pubs in Sao Paulo, but you want
It's
to
an
put it in a
untapped
zone
market.
where you're
It's an
going to get.
untapped market.
It is an untapped market. You want to put it in a zone where you've got some walk-ins, because one of the other things that councils really look at is parking. So if you happen to be in a zone where they're going to suggest you need lots of parking, then that takes up a lot of space, a lot of valuable space that you could be using
That you're
for
paying for.
outdoor drinking areas, etc., and holds up the DA. I've seen it hold up DAs on numerous occasions, parking. It's ridiculous.
I'll just add to that anything in the CBD of Brisbane, in particular, I'm sure it might be similar across all of our capital cities, but you're exempt from having to worry about parking.
Let's assume that's true, and if it's wrong, we'll correct ourselves later.
I know it's true for at least Wollongabba, because it's in the CBD, and anything that's West End, South Bank, you don't have to worry about it.
Awesome. So I guess just to summarise, guys, we've got floor space. We're looking at 400 to 600 square metres as a sweet spot.
Yep.
Power requirements, we need about 100 amps, three-phase. Minimum. Ceiling height's a minimum of 5 metres, ideally. Water supply, we're looking at a 1-inch main that can supply 100 litres a minute. Do the Bunnings bucket test.
Remember the downstream reduction.
Zoning, you're looking at light industrial or mixed zoning. And then floors, just checking they can hold the weight, and investigate that before doing anything, buying or renting. And Sao Paulo is an untapped market.
Yep.
I think you've covered it.
Awesome.
We assume. We've never been to Sao Paulo.
Well, that's true. Well, that's it. Episode 2 of the Well Brewed podcast. If you have any subjects you'd like us to talk about, or any specific questions you want us to answer, please hit us up on Facebook or Instagram at Wellbrewed, or email us at podcast@wellbrewed.com.au. It's WELLBREWD. There's an E missing. .com.au.